Ladies and gentlemen, I have an exclusive for you. If you guys missed the Push to Talk podcast yesterday, I had on Joe Brammer, the CEO of Bulkhead, and Brian McCran, the community manager. You guys might know him as Lossy on YouTube, an old Battlefield YouTuber. They're both from Bulkhead, and they're currently working on their new project, War Dogs. This is a game that I've known about for a long time, but we haven't really had any information on until right now. I strongly urge you guys to check out that interview. We go into the depths of game development, the politics behind owning your own studio, partnering up with publishers. These guys went through a fucking journey coming from the old days of Battalion 1944 to now. Today, I want to break down what War Dogs is, why we should be excited for it, the lessons that these guys took from their old projects, and how they got to where they are today. Head on over to patreon.com/BigFry. If you want to see more dev interviews and deep dives and discussions like this, support the channel over there. You get early access to Push to Talk podcast episodes, exclusive live streams and videos on a monthly basis, and more. As always, my name is Big Fry. Let's talk War Dogs. What we have here is something unlike anything else we've seen on the market. It has traces of Battlefield. It has traces of World War III, but it also has traces of Arma and one of the game modes that was modded into Arma, which was King of the Hill. War Dogs is a combined arms tactical FPS in a very similar vein to Battlefield. It has tanks, it has helicopters, it has destruction, and what it has is instead of two teams battling, you actually have three different teams battling for control over these sectors. And within this battle, you earn in-game currency for every kill, for every point you get, for everything that you do, you earn cash, and then you leave these battles and you can spend the cash to upgrade weapons, to get different attachments, to get different gear, and then go back into your next game with your upgraded gear. So it's got elements of extraction shooters in terms of that gameplay loop. It's got elements of Battle Royale where all of these teams are being pushed to the central location to capture this sector. So it's pushing you towards the middle of this map. And this map is massive, and then it has different play areas, kind of similar to what Battlefield 6 is doing now. It's got full destruction. And then, like I mentioned, you have three teams fighting over control, which is a little bit of a different dynamic than just like the one-on-one teams that we've seen in every fucking game ever. I love this idea. I want to call it asymmetrical multiplayer, where you have three different forces battling it out. I like the idea of it, and I think the gameplay here, from what you guys are seeing, I think it looks legit. One thing they mentioned during the show is they want to make sure that it's grounded and that it feels realistic, but that they don't forget that it's still a video game and they still care about that fun factor. And that's something that they have learned through the years. They want to make sure that the game is fun and that it plays well. And honestly, I get vibes of like a better World War III, a more fluid World War III with like a little bit of I want to say like an insurgency feel to it, but with that combined arms gameplay that we know and love from games like Battlefield. Now, one of the most important things that we can take away from this development is that this is on Unreal Engine 5, but during the show, they also mentioned that they understand how bad Unreal Engine 5 is for large-scale FPS like this. So, for the last few years, they have been developing their own framework that is essentially an advanced framework that overlays on top of Unreal Engine 5 so that they can actually do what they need to do with the engine to be able to deliver this experience. Now, obviously, we won't know how the game feels until we get our hands on it. It's slated to launch into early access sometime in 2026. I'm anxious to get my hands on it. I think what I'm seeing here in these clips looks good, and from what we're hearing about their internal like family and friends testing they were doing over the holidays, it's sounding like it's coming together and taking shape. If there's one thing I can take from Battalion 1944 is that these guys know gunplay and they know movement better than a lot of other dev teams out there. And I know, as soon as I mentioned Battalion 1944 or Bulkhead, the alarm bells ring for people who were around back then. I covered the rise and the fall of that game and that studio back then, from a Kickstarter project that was promising to make a Call of Duty, like old school World War II spiritual successor, to the game launching, flopping, and just watching what happened to that project was a tragedy. And a lot of people still hold a lot of grudges towards Battalion and towards Bulkhead for that game. But as I pointed out a couple of years ago, Joe, like 8 years or 7 years after the fact, came out and Bulkhead just refunded everybody for that project, which is something we actually talked about during this podcast. I thought that was one of the most genuine moves from a developer, where you released a product that didn't hit the mark for a lot of people. There were bugs and stuff at launch. The servers were a disaster. And then years after the fact, instead of just going, yeah, well, you know, we fucked up, they basically said, if you can provide a receipt for like a purchase of Battalion, no matter your playtime, no matter what, like if you were a Kickstarter backer, we're just gonna refund you that money. And as a YouTuber who was very critical of Battalion and what they did post-launch and the server issues and all that stuff, I had to give props where props was due. That was one of the most genuine moves that I had ever seen from a developer, especially like they had a new publisher on board. They've been working on War Dogs. They had all but like moved on to, you know, bigger and better things. And they still felt really bad about how their first game came out the gate. And you can tell that that experience still lives with Joe. You can see it throughout that interview. We talk about Battalion. We talk about the good, the bad, the ugly of game development, how they went from, I would say, I don't want to call it a failed Kickstarter. And I point out in the podcast that they learned a lot of lessons from that. And then they took that and ran with it. They built it into a new studio. They had to eventually buy back their own studio from Tencent recently. It is a crazy story. And when I asked them what was the biggest lesson they took from the flop, or whatever you want to call it, the failure of Battalion 1944, Joe said that the way that their back-end infrastructure was built back then was a fucking disaster. And so that was a big focus point of this development, and it's why for the last 2 or 3 years, they've just been working in total silence. We've seen little snippets here and there. We knew Bulkhead was working on something. And if I can be honest, after my video a few weeks back on publishers and what I think is going on in the indie space in terms of predatory companies coming in and fucking over developers, Joe reached out and said, hey, I want to talk to you. Let's fucking have a podcast. Let's talk about development and let's get into it. And so during that show, we talked about Battalion, the pitfalls, the good, the bad. We talked about how they had to literally buy back their studio from Tencent just before the holiday season here. We learned a lot about the ins and outs of game development and more so the politics around it and what it means to go from an independent studio to being, you know, partnered up with Square Enix and Splash Damage and Tencent to now being fully fucking independent. It's a crazy journey that these guys have went on, and luckily they got through the other side of it generally unscathed. A lot of developers don't get that kind of opportunity, and so obviously I'm wishing these guys the best, and I hope that War Dogs is a critical success for them. But in terms of the gameplay, in terms of the mechanics, and in terms of that feel, I won't know until I get my hands on later this year. I want to know what you guys think. Is War Dogs something that you would be interested in? Let me know, because I'll be following along with this. I want to see these guys succeed, and will be giving my feedback when I can get my hands on. I want to give a major shout out to everybody who is supporting this channel on Patreon. Without you guys, this podcast wouldn't have been started, that interview wouldn't exist, and this video wouldn't have happened as well. So genuinely thank you guys so much for supporting this channel. Leave a like on the video and subscribe for everything FPS. 2026 is about to be the biggest year on this channel in a long time. And if you guys want to check out my game Transients, it's available now on Steam. All of my links are down in the description below. I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you on the next one.